to talk about today in my first episode of this kitchen podcast. It's gonna be a long video. However, I'm going to divide up the various different topics. Right now, I seem to have 9 topics into bite-sized chunks and smaller videos. So look forward for those. I'm JJ Legal. I am in the dockets of the various different lawsuits involving the Trump administration, giving you a sense of calm, giving you a sense of purpose and understanding that there is some aspect of accountability. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is Afton Bain yesterday in Tennessee 7th District was a special election. So she didn't win. However, why that was important is because the district that she lost in went for Donald Trump at 22. I'm praying here for you a clip from a CNN analysis the next day, just saying that from 2016, 2020, 2024, that district went for Donald Trump. The most was plus 22 for Donald Trump in 24, and for them to narrow that gain down, to narrow it down to like 8. So the challenger won by just 0.8. That's a sign, is indication that people are that's a blue wave sign. According to CNN analysis, that of the vast few special elections in Arizona, Texas, Florida, and Tennessee across the last special elections, there's been double-digit gains, and 5 out of 5 times the party that wins in the special elections overwhelmingly takes over the House. And that analysis said that you're looking at a 40-point net gain seat. That's more than enough for Operation 2/3. Not only to have like a substantial lead, meaning taking over the speakerships, taking over the chairmanships and the various different divisions, which mean you get subpoena authority, you can bring people out, that's when you catch everybody, because essentially you're now swearing under oath. Now, if you don't swear under oath, that's when you go to jail. That's how Steve Bannon went to jail, because he refused to come. That's how Roger Stone went to jail, because he came before the committee and he lied. He got caught, perjured himself. So this is when people say about accountability, we want them to go to jail. Here's the chance for them to either go to jail, fess up. If they fess up, you're looking at potential convictions, potential charges. If they don't fess up, they're looking at potential jail time for contempt of court, contempt of Congress. So this is a pretty important thing. So I think that's a win. She put in a good race. And I think someone said that they believed it was nationalized. Here's the thing. This is why I say we need to keep our cards close to our chest. One of the things that I know I said on behalf of Afton Bain is let's nationalize this election. So right towards the end, they were doing some hijinks. I want to get into the hijinks that I feel like the Republicans operatives were doing in terms of telling Democrats, mailing letters to Democrats telling them the election's on the 3rd, which is today, the day after, and then threatening Republicans to vote if they don't vote. So you saw a lot of that. They nationalized elections, making sure that everyone put all their interests, including Trump, and everyone comes down there and try to get them to push them through, even though this party is doing absolutely nothing. I'm sure there's millions of people in the SNAP benefits that were actually about to lose their benefits because of the Republican Party. They just know how to just pressure folks and just use whatever they use to get people to vote for the party, even though it doesn't really help them or American people at all. But anyway, I digress. So that I essentially think that was a win. That is an indicator. I don't like to say stuff like the blue wave is coming, because I feel like last time they've said a blue wave was tsunami or red tsunami, they didn't pan out. We're anticipating a blue wave in certain places and just didn't pan out. So I don't believe in using those sort of terms. Anticipate things. I think just take it day by day. So that was a win and a good indicator. So I think that's the Republicans need to be worried, and why that's good that they should be worried is because and they had a record turnout. Actually, they said the turnout was the same turnout as in the 2022 midterms. So it wasn't a lack of interest. It could have been higher, I'm sure. But that was good. It was good. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing I want you to talk about is the meeting here I'm going to show you of the cabinet. Now, this cabinet meeting was interesting, not just because right now what's circulating is that when Marco Rubio was talking to Donald Trump, he was falling asleep. And the reason why that's also interesting is because in a tweet around the same time or the day before, the night before this, Donald Trump actually went on Truth Social and called Joe Biden Sleepy Joe. The irony. There's a thing with them that says every accusation is a confession. A lot of times they accuse the other side of so many different things that they're either guilty of, they're guilty of planning, they're guilty of doing in a more sinister, evil, cruel, sadistic psychopathic means of doing the same thing they accuse the Democrats of doing. But for the most part, yeah, the man was sleeping. But what I want to say about that cabinet meeting, it's just reflective of the fact that Donald Trump constantly needs adulation. He constantly needs ego boost. He constantly needs people assuring him that he's doing the right thing, that he's strong, because he does not look strong. He looks very weak. He lumbers around. There's videos of him lumbering down the Air Force One, like zigzagging across and just looking sleepy, looking lethargic. There was a New York Times article that came out that says he only works 5 hours a day. Then he takes whatever they give him, whatever he sniffs or his pops to stay energized, and then he's like Truth Social all night. Like he did 400 or so Truth Social points in like overnight, and just all sorts of manic, crazy like conspiracy theories. It's like, if anyone did that, you'd be like, Grandpa, I'm going to talk to the people at Shady Acres and tell them to take away your phone and turn off the lights and make sure that you get a good night's sleep, because you're up doing all sorts of crazy stuff. He's the oldest president at this point now, ever. And he's just like, he's not cut up for this. He's, besides the fact that he's a evil, racist, sexist, xenophobic, brute, know nothing. Besides that, why he shouldn't have the job. He also shouldn't have the job because physically, mentally, he's just not caught up. He's not up to the task, and he needs to be removed. And since the Republicans in Congress won't do it, and since the Supreme Court, the conservatives in the Supreme Court keeps allowing him to advance his really destructive, cruel, sadistic, hateful agenda that essentially destroys the economy, ignores the rule of law, dismantles the Constitution, creates a sort of authoritarian, dictatorial state of lawlessness. Since they're doing that and greenlighting that, the only option is for us, the people, to do what we need to do, as we've done yesterday. The folks in Tennessee, that's a sign. Keep doing it, keep showing up, and we'll remove them for them. And so that's what's coming for them. But the fact that he had to have all these people is such like North Korea. I saw that a little while ago there was a report from, I think it was Harry Reid. It was from not John Boehner. Why am I thinking all the was a Republican representative, what was his name? God, I don't know why I'm forgetting the name. I'm drawing a blank. Said when he went to Mar-a-Lago, it was like going to North Korea, where people stand when Donald Trump's walking in the room, and they stand when he, sits, he stands up, he says something, and he loves the fact that Kim Jong-un has that sort of thing. That's why I think he loved dictators. He loved Viktor Orban. He loved Vladimir Putin. So one of the first things he did when he came to the office, he started joking around, taking over Greenland, taking over Panama Canal, threatening Mexico, threatening Nigeria, threatening Venezuela, just threatening to annex properties, Canada, and things like that, because he just had this weird fetish to be so much like other people. He's always clamoring to be like someone else. I think even this really silly, stupid, I shouldn't say it's stupid, but this Giving Tuesday announcement he did with Adele, saying we're going to give money, and it's going to be called Trump Care or Trump Loves for Children. I think all of that is essentially just him trying to be like Barack Obama and Obamacare, which is interesting enough, because Obamacare is a pejorative meaning, is like a word that Republicans use to poke fun at the Affordable Health Care Act, because that's something that Obama was promoting it, and so he tried to call it Obamacare like it's a joke. Then Obama embraced it. He said, yeah, I love it, I'll take it. Yeah, Obamacare, because Obama cares. And then now it's a thing, and like, how many years later people love it. There's 50 million people up in it, and a good chunk, the majority of people who enjoy Obamacare and the benefits from it are from red states. And so Trump's over there jealous of Obamacare, something that was a joke from the Republicans, and he wants so much to have some initiative named after him. That's why he's trying to create that arc and have that arc, named for him, in that ballroom, and he wants to have the ballroom named for him, and he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He wants to leave a legacy, because he knows he's on his way out, and he's trying to make up amends for being such a horrible person for the most of his life, and having done things that we won't say, but we're going to find out, and it's going to leave a bad legacy. So he hopes that cancels out the truth of his legacy, which is not going to be pretty. It's not pretty now, but when we uncover the real things that's really problematic, those little attempts to get a Nobel Peace Prize or get things named after him, it's going to be for nothing. It's going to be like really minor. But anyway, so that cabinet meeting was a trip. It was just all that was. It was just fake, and they look so pathetic. I don't know if they realized how silly they look, just sitting up there lauding all sorts of false praises and saying that he kept the hurricanes away. Girl, please, y'all just sound crazy. Y'all sound cult-like. It's like Cult 47. For people looking for accountability and are concerned whether or not this party and this administration will be held accountable for all of their evil lawlessness. There was a story that happened last month, early in the month, that a lot of people know. A lot of people aren't talking about it. You do have your side. Jamie Dimon is the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. Jamie Dimon did an interview with Erin Burnett's out front. And during that interview, it came up about the ballroom, and it was asked specifically, why didn't JP Morgan Chase participate? And Jamie Dimon said specifically, the appearance of impropriety. He is part of a wealth management company, and one of the things they do is assess the risk.
Much smaller scale than what's happening in Washington, right, where the East Wing has been demolished for what's going to be a very, very large ballroom that the president is building. Now, a lot of CEOs have rushed to donate to this, right? And it matters to him, right? So he looks at the list. On that list, you got Amazon, Coinbase, Google, you got a whole lot of others. Comcast, tons of companies on there. I didn't see JP Morgan Chase on that list. Did you think about it? Is there any chance you're going to do it?
You have to look at JP. We have an issue, okay, which is anything we do, since we do a lot of contracts with governments here and around the world, we have to be very careful how anything's perceived, and also how the next DOJ is going to deal with it. So we're quite conscious of the risk we bear by doing anything that looks like, buying favors or anything like that. So, do we do things like that? And but we also have policies where we don't do certain things,
right?
Because it just makes it easier for us. We have helped the inaugurations. That was a normal thing that a lot of companies did.
Right.
So we'll see.
But the concern of buying favors.
When they did an assessment of risk, they knew that this man, Donald Trump, is on his way out. He's got one foot in the, if you know what I mean. And they know that in terms of the continuum, his organization, his company must last the 4 years, if that much, of Donald Trump's terms. And he sees on the other side, there's going to be Democrats leading it, and there will be investigations. And he is not trying to have his company on the hook for what it looks like is pay to play. If you don't know what pay to play is essentially exchanging favors. And for those of you who don't know, this is why I'm a big advocate for people who work in private sector, people who are used to running their own company however the hell they want, no accountability, perhaps because they're not publicly traded, they don't have shareholders, it's private. You can do all these things. You can do pay to play, you can do all the nonsense you do. What happens is you have people who work in private sectors who are unfamiliar with the fact that government is supposed to be working for the people. There's things with government called transparency. You don't do things under the table. You don't do things in secret. You don't say none of your business. Everything is a business because everyone that's running you, if you're working for the office, we pay your salary. The people, we have freedom of information requests. So there's transparency, there's reporting, there's conflict of interest checks, and the people who work in private sector that are used to doing whatever the hell they want come in the government and they try to run government to pad their pockets to make themselves secret, and they do nothing for the people. Government is for the people. That's the purpose of government. If you want to work for private sector, if you want to pad your pocket and do whatever you want, stay out of government. So he knows it's their accountability. And when you work for the government, if you want to get something done, let's say I want to merge. If I'm going to do a merger, I need to make sure it's in the public interest, that I'm going to provide a variety of services. I'm going to provide accurate, great prices. We're going to bring innovation. We're going to hire. We're going to do all stuff because I want the government to approve my merger. That's what you normally do. Or you can slip something under the table. That's a crime. That's a bribe. So if you are helping Donald Trump build this big East Wing that he sees as his vision, and everyone looks at that, and you're doing that because you're trying to curry favor because you have a merger, or you want to avoid regulation, or there's something else that you need from the government that normally there's standards required, which you get to get this, try to get this done. You need to do certain things, and after you do the certain things, you fall in line, you get it. But you can't be backdoor helping somebody increasing the problem. That's unlawful, and that's what it looks like. So Jamie Dimon was like, I ain't not doing that. I'm not setting up my company. Those tech bros, those other companies that want to do that, that's on them. But they're prepared to take the risk. So it's a risk. So that tells you to the extent to which that people who are savvy and sophisticated are aware that there is an end. There's accountability on the side. So I hope that gives you comfort. It does me. When I saw that, I was like, hey, so that's an underreported story, but I wanted to bring you that. It looks like bribes, all the stuff they're doing. We're watching it. We're monitoring it. We're keeping track. I mean, they can't believe that it's 165 million people did not vote for Donald Trump. You have a government of 4 million people. The majority of those people, overwhelming majority of people, do not approve Donald Trump. So you have all these people doing stuff, gathering data, preparing for the day when he's out of office, so the hammer can come down. And it's going to come down. So I know you might not believe it, but it is. And I'm going to be here. So that's something to know. This is some great news, right? So here's the thing. Let me tell you what the Trump administration has been doing to try to mass deport people who are here legally. And right now, you should all realize that you've seen the videos that it has nothing to do with criminals. It has nothing to do with illegal. It's about, to me, if you ask me, it's ethnic cleansing, and I'm going to keep using that word. It's about trying to remove as many black and brown and non-white people from the country as possible. Donald Trump, they're saying the quiet powers are allowed. They're saying things like repatriation or remigration, which essentially removing the people of color. Donald Trump, during his campaign, said that there's too many people. We're a dumping ground. There's all these people from all these nations. He said it with so much disgust.
We're like a garbage can for the rest of the world to dump the people that they don't want.
You know, West Indies, there are people who are already here, yes, and there are folks who came as formerly enslaved people, right. But a good chunk of the people, the majority of folks who are here, immigrated from Europe, and then later on from Asia, and then later on from other parts of the world. So it's a nation of immigrants. Donald Trump himself is a child of an immigrant, grandson of two immigrants. Two of his three wives are immigrant. All his children except Tiffany are half immigrant. And I always talk about this. Corey Lewandowski is a child of two Polish immigrants. I say John Toon is a son of an immigrant mom. Ted Cruz is immigrant. Marco Rubio, Stephen Miller is a great-great-grandchild of immigrants from Belarus. That means what is it? Tucker Carlson's great-great-grandchild. So they're all immigrants, but they, for some reason, believe that European immigrants have a bigger stake and claim in this land than the more recent immigrants. But I digress. Get my I Digress merch. This video is sponsored by my merch. Each one teach one is a saying from the woke era of the 90s. Each person saves, each one teaches another person, and we learn more. You can get it at jjlegal.com, which sponsors this video. And if you like to sponsor my videos and help me bring video content to your audiences, that are really savvy, sophisticated, politically active, you can check out jjlegal.com and check out my media kit there. So that's my little ad. Okay, so let me get to the great news. The great news is that a judge issued a nationwide, across the country, created a class. Because remember, nationwide injunctions is an issue that came up in the birthright citizenship case from earlier this year, essentially, where the Supreme Court said that district court judges, federal judges, are not allowed to have injunction based on the entire nation. They can only do an injunction stop based on the people who come before them. So if I'm in North Carolina and I'm a judge and I make a decision, it can only impact the people in North Carolina or people within my jurisdiction, not the entire country. They're like nationwide stuff, that's for us. However, the Supreme Court did say you can do class certification, create a class brace of people who are similar situated. So a judge in California created a class of all of the migrants who have been subject to this really ridiculous thing that the Trump administration has done in their process and attempt to migrate, to remove people even if they're legally coming to courts. Anyone who was coming to immigration court checking in because they perhaps arrived at the border and claimed asylum, or because they came overstayed and they adjusted status from a visitor visa to a permanent visa, and so they get a number. Once you get a number, you're now technically documented, even if you arrived undocumented or you came across the border and you're checking in. Those people who check in and continue to check in, the process is slow. There's a backlog. We trust those people, the fact that they've been checking in. And in order to say, we trust you guys checking in, we're not going to detain you. There's no need to detain you. The Trump administration had 65,000 people in detention because they decided to change the laws. So what they were doing is having people when people come to the courts, they were canceling and dismissing their case. Why? Because when they cancel and dismiss their case, even though they've been living here 5, 10, 20, some 30 years, checking in, going through the process, they say, now we cancel your case, we're going to put you under give you a new number. Now under the new number, you're technically new, like as if you just arrived, and treating them as if they just arrived. Because the law says if someone arrives at the border or someone is under 2 years, you can detain them because there's a thinking that they may try to escape because they've been living under the radar. And so you want to find out more about them. By changing the status of those people and putting them into that category, that's what's been the basis of detaining people. And then they've been denying them bond hearings. And so there's holding these people. That's why you have that mom who just pregnant, who just had a baby. That's why you have these shopkeepers and these merchants and these nurses and homeowners and these elderly and people, because they've just been going around. And that is also why they fired a bunch of immigration judges, because some of the immigration judges was like, no. There's a leaked memo from San Diego or San Francisco that said that they had asked the USCIS to let them know when someone's coming for a green card here.
An internal memo from ICE has been leaked instructing USCIS officers to tell them when an immigrant has come to their interview for the green card so that they can detain them. Did ICE announce this? No. Did USCIS publish this in the Federal Register like they're supposed to? Of course not. And where is this happening? San Diego. If you're out of status and or you have a removal order, this could very likely happen to you if you're interviewing in San Diego. Now, I'm not seeing this with my clients or anywhere outside of San Diego, but if it happens in other offices, I will definitely let you know.
So they're attacking people who've gone through the process, temporary to getting a green card. So it means they're here legal and trying to detain those people so they can shift them. The only purpose of that is to remigrate, to stop the migration, to stop what I think is this extension burst as part of the Great White Replacement Theory. And so they're trying to do as much as possible to ethnically cleanse and stop what's coming in 2065 when there'll be no majority race, meaning the white population in the United States will not be the majority. And I think that's what all of this is about, to be honest. And so, yeah, that's what you have. So the judge was like, to the extent that you are detaining people, and why are they detaining people? Because once they detain them, they can try to deprive them, scare them, threaten them, stop them from seeing a lawyer, and quickly deport them. So by the time they get a lawyer, by the time they get stuff, they've already put them on a ship and deported them really quickly. And that is why they want to detain them, so they can quickly remove them from the country. And it's just a tactic of violating people's due process rights. So thanks to Judge Sunshine, I love these names, Sunshine, Suzanne Sykes from the Central District of California, that you're looking at 65,000 people being let out. Donald Trump and them say, well, you can only let people out on a case-by-case basis. And she's like, no, I'm going to create a class of everybody because the injury is common to everyone. You're trying to deny people their due process rights. And I shall not have that. So yeah, so that's a pretty great win. Yeah, and again, it's just like trying to remove people, and I love that. And here's, you should also know that there's been over 100 judges that have ruled that Donald Trump's mandatory detention process, and these are judges that are appointed by Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, as well as 35 judges appointed by Republican presidents. So George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump himself. I know we always mention George H.W.H. Walker Bush. Anyway, for the most part, yeah, those judges have been saying that's not how the process works. If someone's been here for 2 years, for over 2 years, we don't hold them back. And so you've seen cases, I've done some reports on them, saying you got to let these folks go. And there's a class. Let me tell you about another class. Oh my God, when you hear about this story, have a seat, because this is a big one. So over Labor Day weekend, the Trump administration decided they had targeted 600 children, including some children. There's one girl, she was 14 years old, she was on dialysis, picked them out of bed at 9:54 at night, put them on a plane. The reports I'm reading and some of the declarations from the kids were like, they came for me, and that I was wondering, I was scared, I thought it was going to be my turn because they come for the other person. What does that sound like? Does that sound like Anne Frank? Does it not sound like the children from the Holocaust? That's what they were doing, picking them up, to sign them up. And then they argued with, here's what they did in the middle of the night. And if you follow me, one of the things I've said is that the reason why they moved the Alien Enemies Act, those 200-something Venezuelan men, in the middle of the night on March 15th, the day after Donald Trump declared that the gang is an alien excursion, and this law, this obscure 18th century law, gives them right to just report these people without due process. Though later on, all 9 justices of the Supreme Court said that's not true. You have to give those people opportunity to defend themselves against your accusation that they are gang members. And as we now know, later reporting, confession from the Trump administration and the dockets, and then also from 60 Minutes, that something like 90% of the people were not had no criminal history. And as the stories start coming out, a lot of them were not gang members. So had they been given the opportunity, the rights that they're afforded to, they would not have actually been deported. But I digress. So he did that in the middle of the night. I reported recently about some African migrants that they had shipped off to Ghana. All of them were in the middle of the night. They do that because they know what they're doing is some sneaky, illegal shit, and they don't want to be caught. So that's what they did to these kids. Fortunately, migrant organizations are aware that this government is sneaky, sadistic as shit, and so they ran to Judge Sparkles, Sparkles Sukanan. So you have Sunshine and Sparkles, I love these names, halted and said no, and saved those kids from being deported. Later on, the case was assigned to a Trump-appointed judge, Kelly, and he said he joined in with the other judges. So now you have 4 judges that thought literally that it was okay for you to deport children. Come to find out, thank you for the whistleblowers. I did say this early on in administration. I said what's going to save us is not just the district court judges, not just the nonprofits, not just the unions, but the people who are working, the 4 million people working in the government who don't like this shit. They're going to be leaking shit. So whistleblower came forward and said that when the Department of Justice had someone from declare that those children were qualified to be kicked out, that person who said that knew very well that was not the case. Just lied. It's just like, I just don't understand. Let me tell you specifically what the whistleblower said. The whistleblower said that Angie Salazar, who's the acting director of the Office of Refugee and Settlement, she put 30 kids at risk, and then to trying to send those kids to Guatemala. And here's the thing: the children that they send are at risk of being abused, neglected, human trafficked, tortured, and other victims of violence. She tried to return them to Guatemala. Then later on, the judge that was reviewing another version of this case, Judge Rosemary Marquez in Tucson, found out they tried to do the same thing to Honduran kids. They tried to deport 69 Honduran kids. And so Judge Tim Kelly was asked by this children's migrant organization to certify a class to protect all the children, because she said you can't trust them. Wherever there are children in orphanage, the Trump administration is trying to gather those kids and dump them. So post-production editing, I wanted to add the reason why the migrant organization asked Judge Tim Kelly to expand the class that he'd already certified as to the Guatemalan and Honduras children to include any child in the United States who is subject to protection from deportation because they've been previously trafficked, abused, abandoned, and our laws that protect those kids that are in our current custody, that it'd be expanded because the Trump administration is trying to do it to all of them. They attached, as part of their support, a declaration from a 16-year-old kid from Mexico who had arrived at the border and who was escaping being sexually violated and assaulted by her alcoholic mother's boyfriend. I think she said that she fled to the United States. Her life was threatened in Mexico. She grew up with an alcoholic mother and father who was separated when she was young, and her boyfriend sexually assaulted her. She reported to police, but the police, his family, made death threats against her because the criminal groups in Mexico are afraid to protect her. So she was coming to the United States seeking refuge from possible death. And so because of the status of the way she was seeking, that she was fine. She said she's safe in where she is, that her sponsor in the United States is sponsoring her, and she'd been placed with her aunt and she was stable. So they want to remove this girl who left being sexually assaulted in Mexico, fled, escaping it, and we have laws to protect her. She's already placed with her aunt is taking care of her. They want to remove this girl and send her back to that situation. So then the migrant organization is like, we have laws and we're humane people and she's already safe. Why are you taking a safe child and want to deport her back to a situation where she's going to be sexually assaulted? So I believe, and the Trump administration has not responded yet, by the way, to this request. What are they going to say? Like, how can they defend this? So again, I think the judge is going to grant the nationwide class to protect all kids from the Trump administration. I just wanted to bring that up to your attention specifically. But they're crazy. They're racist, they're crazy, and there's crazy. And Salazar wrongfully, according to the whistleblower, declared that those kids were fine and that the parents had asked them for them. And then she was like, the whistleblower says absolutely incorrect. Judge Marquez says she saw no coordination with at least one parent that they had asked for them. She said the notice went out in the middle of the night when most of these attorneys are sleeping. As I said, they do that. They did that twice. So they did that to the children that they were trying to send to Honduras, and they did the children that they tried to send to Guatemala. In the middle of the night, they said, we already have a system in place to do this. I don't understand why we didn't go through the follow process. Again, I always say that one of the reasons why the Trump administration gets in trouble is because there's certain specific process for doing things. They avoid the process because the process involves accountability. The process requires standards. It requires lockstep is time, and they don't want to do time. They don't want accountability. They don't want to do the right thing. They want to be unlawful. They want to carry around this cruel, sadistic campaign, and they're doing it purposefully and intentionally to avoid that. It was discovered that in 4 of the cases, they said Guatemala, they said the children were already living with sponsors. They were just not, it was just a lie. And you can release the kids if there's certain standards, but it was like those standards, they didn't meet. They just made up all sorts of stuff. And it was in a direct violation of the rules that says you don't send children out when you know they're going to be subject to abuse. And yeah, that's crazy. So there's a class created to protect all kids. Like, we have to protect the children from this administration. Because, and Project 2025 has a section, the specific portion of our U.S. laws that protects children. Project 2025 wants to repeal that law. Why would they want to repeal a law that protects children? Children have been previously sex trafficked, abused, or tortured. And they call themselves Christian because they have no care whatsoever for children who are not white. It's a neo-Nazi white nationalist organization that Heritage Foundation is, and the Project 2025 people. And Russell Vought was caught on a hot mic saying that he wants it to be, if it was up to him, only Christians will come here. So he's not interested in Muslims or people from other countries coming.
You can say we're a Christian nation, and my viewpoint is mostly that I would probably be Christian nationism. That's pretty close to Christian nationalism. Can we, if we're going to have legal immigration, can we get people that actually believe in Christianity? Is that something, or do we have to have, are we not allowed to ask questions about Sharia law?
What could we see America looking like, I guess,
I mean,
in an ideal world?
In an ideal world, I mean, I think we could save the country in a sense of, the largest deportation in history.
First Amendment, it says freedom of religion. It's a nation of immigrants. We have people from all over the place, but they're trying to twist and form and force us into this crystal fascist state that nobody asked for. I don't know if they didn't realize that did they watch The Handmaid's Tale or read Margaret Atwood's book and said, that's a great idea, let's see if we can do that, see if that can happen, and see if there could be no resistance and they could have total capitulation? I don't know. So anyway, Salazar was wrong when she said that the children do not have indications of being a victim of trafficking, and they do not have indications of child abuse or neglect, perpetrator, parents, or legal guardian. So there was like that's crazy. So there's a class created to protect all kids. Like, we have to protect the children from this administration. She said the database indicated that at least 30 of these kids were deemed eligible to be returned to torture. And they did not. The whistleblowers, they lied. Yeah. So the good news, again, class action, the judges, the nonprofits, the organizations, the unions, we're saving the day, and we're going to protect ourselves. There'll be accountability. Stephen Miller actually went on record and said that the children asked to be gone back. The parents said they should be returned. And I question whether or not Stephen Miller was running the things. He's running the Department of Justice, even though he's not a lawyer. He's running the Homeland Security, even though he doesn't have any experience with that. Neither does what's her face, Kristi Noem. So I don't think that matters. Anyway, so Stephen Miller is not to be trusted. He's the one who told these. He said recently that to the ICE agents, he said, "You're an ICE agent. You have immunity while doing your jobs, and so no one can stop you from doing your job. If any officer or any leftist or any blue city tries to prosecute you from doing your job, they'll be held to account as a felony."
But what we need to reassure a couple points to all ICE officers: you have federal immunity in the conduct of your duties, and anybody who lays a hand on you or tries to stop you or tries to obstruct you is committing a felony. You have immunity to perform your duties, and no city official, no state official, no illegal alien, no leftist agitator or domestic insurrectionist can prevent you from fulfilling your legal obligations and duty.
That's what Stephen Miller said. That can't be further from the truth. Like, that is absolutely false accusations. In fact, there have been several ICE agents that actually have gone to jail for violating laws, including state laws. There's an ICE agent right now in jail for violating New York state law. And here is a slideshow that you're watching here of over a dozen ICE agents over the past decade or so who have actually been arrested, indicted, convicted, sentenced, and have served or are serving time in prison, including for federal and state crimes. Then you have the officers that were responsible for Freddie Gray's. You have the officers that are responsible for the killing of George Floyd, Derek Chauvin, and the others that are in jail. There was a goon squad of officers who were going around doing all sorts of brutish sort of gang-like sort of situations, they all actually pled guilty and went to jail. So there's several examples of officers. Recently, Sonia Massey is a mom who called the police because she thought there was an invasion, and the officer just, I don't know what the hell is wrong with him, trigger happy. She just had a pot of water. Even if she threw the pot of water on him, he was going to survive. He decided the threat of that black woman holding a pot of water and saying something out of rebuke in the name of Jesus, that was threatening enough for him to pull his revolver and shoot her dead. So he's gone to jail. So he was convicted. So immunity, I think not. Breonna Taylor's, the officer that killed Breonna Taylor while she was sleeping in jail. So there's lots of examples of actual officers who are more trained than these ICE agents who've gone to jail. So if officers who are committing crimes and found guilty for excessive violence can go to jail, so can ICE agents. And I had this example said in a recent video. Charles Serenghi, 66-year-old, he was fired and he was confessed, and he's going to jail for prison to up to a year. So it's very much possible. There was a 1 year in prison for a U.S. border agent accused of ordering women to show their breasts. That was this year. So another ICE agent. Indeed, there are ICE agents who have actually gone to jail for that. Stephen Miller is incorrect. And Stephen Miller is also wrong because Stephen Miller often says stuff in social media, shows that he has no clue how the law works. And he gets the administration in trouble. During Donald Trump's first term, when Donald Trump's lawyers were arguing that the reason why they had a Muslim ban was for safety reasons, Stephen Miller was out in front saying, no, we don't want any Muslims. So, of course, the organizations that have stood in the Trump administration against that ban quickly just put Stephen Miller's statements on the record, and he lost the case because Stephen Miller was out and about saying the wrong thing. Like I said, with the migrant kids, Stephen Miller was saying, no, the parents wanted the kids to go back. Stephen Miller actually said that on the record, like in social media, I think. And that was absolutely not true, which I said, is there coordination? Like, who's running this thing? Stephen Miller also told Donald Trump in an overall meeting with Bukele, who's the president of El Salvador, that the Supreme Court justices, all 9, had ruled in their favor. And then he was saying these things in this meeting at the Oval Office, but so definitively, like, yeah, they said no one is in charge, this. And
that he was no longer eligible. So we had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States.
Actually, the opposite of deportation. He was granted a withholding of removal, meaning like he was told that he cannot be deported, at least to El Salvador. Secondly, the portion of the immigration law that withheld Kilmar's removal also gave him the right to work. He got a work permit and continued to work from 2019 until 2025 when he was deported by the Trump administration.
And had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation.
There's no way that the 2019 deportation order mentioned Donald Trump's designation of MS-13 because they took place 6 years apart. So
this issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here.
First of all, the reason why they had to return him was because the Department of Justice attorneys told the judge that he was deported in error. So at no point did the judge have to invert anything and discern anything when the DOJ admitted it. And then secondly, they never mentioned the word kidnap. Kidnap is a legal term when you're taking someone without their intent and sending them back to El Salvador. At no point would someone who wants to be in the United States with his wife, stepkid, and child be described as being kidnapped to be returned to a place where he said he had a credible fear.
That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously.
The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 in favor of the immigrant and against the Trump administration. The only part that was against the judge was telling the judge that she couldn't specifically tell them what time and how to bring him back. But they did affirm that she was right in ordering him and ordering the Trump administration to return him. They just said she couldn't specify its precise time. So that's a blatant mischaracterization of what the court said.
Stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador who again is a member of MS-13, which is, I'm
The Supreme Court did not mention the Secretary of State, neither did it mention the President. It just mentioned the executive generally. Secondly, he calls this man an MS-13 for 6 or 7 years. The government has not proven one bit that he's a member of MS-13. In fact, the Department of Justice lawyer was fired because he refused to argue that he was a member of MS-13 because he says there's no facts to back that up. There's nothing, I'm not going to go to court and say something without any proof. So he said, I have my integrity. Unless there's proof of that, I'm not saying that. And they have yet to say that. In fact, I argued before, when the immigrant Kilmar Brego Garcia went to the El Salvador prison in Sicat, the senior prison guard separating the gang members based on their tattoos looked at Kilmar and based on his determined that he was not a gang, so he was in a cell with non-gang members. So if anything, that's proof there that he's not MS-13, but yet anyone who keeps repeating that he's MS-13, including Stephen Miller, essentially is setting themselves up for a defamation lawsuit, because that's to be characterized as a member of a dangerous, murderous gang when you're not, which can impugn your character, is defamation. And so Stephen Miller, at any minimum, should be on hook, as well as Trish McLaughlin, Christy Noman, everyone who's ever called that man a MS-13 gang member without qualification that they are alleging it and without facts.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
anything
Court's
to get
asking
it back?
to. And
that-
what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here.
Again, the decision was not in favor of the Trump administration, as Stephen Miller said in that Oval Office meeting, wrongly and incorrectly, because he's not a lawyer and he doesn't understand legal arguments, and I don't think he really understood. And then secondly, he said the man is never going to live here and he could be deported again back to El Salvador. And that's not true, because the order that says he can return to El Salvador stands. And furthermore, he is currently living here right now. So he was wrong. It was popping off. It was so wrong. And I'm like, there are other lawyers in the room know that he's so wrong. And Donald Trump's like, yeah, that's what I heard. He said there was 9-0. It was not. It was 9-0 the other way. And Stephen Miller had a tweet that says that if you come to the United States, you're not entitled to due process. No. All 9 justices of the Supreme Court says that if you come to the United States and you are not documented, habeas corpus, you have the right to due process rights to defend yourself against it. That is entitled. That's process. What Stephen Miller was like, the only process you're entitled to is a deportation process. No, motherfucker, they have the rights. Dumbass. He's so stupid. So Stephen Miller doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's a neo-Nazi. He also, so you get entitled to due process. He was wrong about Kilmar Brego. He was wrong about the kids. He was wrong about the saying that they had a Muslim ban because they don't want Muslims in the country. So he's constantly saying stuff in social media that's getting the Department of Justice in trouble because they go against him and they lose because of him. So don't ever take legal advice from Stephen Miller. If he tells you anything, you don't want to trust his ass. Someone tagged me in this video of a man who said he had to tell his sailors that they had to be careful and they had to carry their passport because there was a sailor who, he's a United States sailor. I think he's a U.S. citizen, and he was harassed by ICE, and ICE said that they thought that his military papers were fake. So this military officer said he had to tell his sailors to carry if you don't look American. Now, isn't that it? I saw that and that I was tweaking because I'm like, that's the thing. The otherization, they really do believe America is just white. That's the end of the day. Because even black Americans, they don't think they qualify. The otherization, anyone who's not white, Christian, is not fully American. They don't qualify as American. So it doesn't matter if you're born here. African Americans who were born here, Latinos Americans who were born here, Asian Americans who were born here. It doesn't matter if you're born here. They don't consider you American. To them, American is white. So, and that's why it's important also for those MAGAs or those people who voted for Donald Trump who are not white, is because you're not included. Including people like Laura Loomer, who's so anti-immigrants, anti-people of color. You're Jewish. Stephen Miller, you're Jewish. Kristen Miller, you're Jewish. They don't regard you guys either as white. Steve Miller's wife. A lot of people saying she's not brown. Like if we didn't know that was Stephen Miller, if she was driving down the street and they were pulling over stuff, Stephen Miller, Crystal, you would get pulled over because you're an ethnic Jew, but you're not white. I don't understand. They don't understand this anyway. So that was interesting. And then finally, I want to bring out the fact that Pete Hegseth is now trying to run away from the fact that he said no survivors. That is a war crime. When he said it was close, I don't know, he keeps firing on warships. There's a process. You do not just shoot. The law says if it's imminent, there's no imminent death from people floating in the boats. That's not imminent. That's not the nature of what you shoot. That's a war crime. And now he knows that he realizes because there's a bipartisan call from Republicans and Democrats saying that we have to investigate. He's saying I was in a room. I didn't do that second strike. I wasn't even there. To which some of here, there's a clip that just came down. They said, we want to see your schedule. And it reminds me of Lee Zeldin. Lee Zeldin, which is Donald Trump's EPA administrator, who's a former lobbyist. Again, you shouldn't have a revolving door. Donald Trump said this. He had a meeting. He had a video. Oh my God, he did a podcast with what's his name? What's that podcaster? And he says, yeah, I don't agree with lobbying. There shouldn't be a revolving door. Meanwhile, Susan Wiles is a lobbyist. Donald Trump cabinet's full of lobbyists. And Lee Zeldin is a polluter. Lobbyist for polluter. Put him in charge of EPA. First thing he does, just as Scott, what's his face, did, the previous EPA administrator, rolls back all the regulations. So they go in the government looking out for their corporate bosses. So when they leave, they go right back to work for them. So they're coming into the government to work on behalf of the corporations, not for the people. To protect our war air. No. So Lee Zeldin got busted because they took away 9 grant program, canceled 1,000 grants on culture war because they were either environmental justice because they hate people of color, or there were grants related to clean energy because clean energy is the opposite of coal, and they work for their coal and natural gas masters. And so anything clean energy, either clean energy, renewable energy is great for the world globally. That's on their ire. Canceled all those grants. So during the oversight hearing, he was saying, yeah, I did it. The oversight senators and House members said, there's no way in hell you reviewed thousand grants in one day because you said you did it. Another person from your office said that he did it. Another officer said 2 people did it. So there was like 3 different accounts of how this happened. And Lee Zeldin was like, I did it. He got all mad. He's like, I did it. I reviewed all those things individual by individual basis. To which I think it was Senator Whitehouse was like, okay, fine, just show me your record. I didn't do a follow-up. Show me your day schedule because as a government, when you work for the government, your daily schedule, especially a high-level cabinet position, is public record. I'm going to see your public record to say where you were that day. If you're saying that you sat there and reviewed, that means it would have been something like 2 seconds per grant, which means that you didn't really do the thorough process and vetting to determine that those grants needed to be revoked. So clearly, they weren't revoked properly.
Here, EPA leadership on April 23rd, Daniel Coogan for the EPA filed a sworn statement in court that said, and I quote here, EPA leadership conducted an individualized grant-by-grant review to determine which grants should continue. He made that statement under oath, and on the following page of his declaration, he said that there were approximately 377 grantees that had received cancellation notices and another 404 grantees who would receive notices within the next 2 weeks, for a total, by my math, of 781 total grantees. Do you dispute his testimony that there were 781 individual grants at issue?
The exact number I don't have offhand, but
you don't dispute it. So let's say that it's 781 or thereabouts.
Reviews, I did those myself.
His testimony under oath was that took place. Then, and I'd ask unanimous consent that declaration of Daniel Coogan be made an exhibit. Then, on May 6th, Travis Voiles of EPA made the following statement, also under oath, also in a court filing. He said, on February 25th, 2025, I conducted an individualized review of EPA grant programs. That day, I decided that certain grant programs should be terminated for policy reasons. So there are 3 things about that Voiles statement that are noteworthy. First, the date. He said that he did this all on February 25th, which is interesting, because if he put in a 10-hour day, that's 600 minutes of time for 781 grant applications, which means he would have had to conclude his review of each of them in 45 seconds without even a bathroom break. The second thing about the statement is that he said, I conducted, not you conducted, Administrator Zeldin, not leadership conducted. He said he conducted, and he said that under oath. The third thing that was interesting is that he dropped in a weasel word, programs. He didn't say individualized review of grants. He said individualized review of grant programs. Mr. Zeldin, is there a difference between a grant and a grant program?
Well, you have individual grants inside of a grant program.
And you could have dozens or even hundreds of individual grants inside of a grant program,
I know
correct?
for a fact that Travis
Correct.
Voiles individually reviewed every single grant individually, and I know that I've reviewed every single grant individually, and I also know that
That is
Travis
not what the
Voiles was
sworn
working-
testimony indicates. Let me reclaim my time here.
But the fact
On
is,
May 16th
we both individually reviewed all of the grants, and I know that he was working on it every single day, not just on one day.
Well, that's not what his sworn testimony was. And on May 16th, DOJ career lawyers who are under an obligation of candor to the tribunal, upon which their right to practice law depends, filed a pleading in federal court that conceded that you had not done individualized grant-by-grant reviews. They were not contesting that APA failed to do an individualized review. In court, they admitted, in fact, their language is, defendants do not contest judgment on the merits of plaintiffs' APA claims. I'd ask that the reply be put into the record, that the Voiles declaration be put into the record, and that an inside EPA news report that discusses that court proceeding be put into the record.
Without objection.
And then yesterday, you stated during your House E&C hearing that you personally reviewed all these grants. Here's what you said. I was the one who made the decision. And I made the decision after doing individual review. I personally reviewed every single grant that I canceled. Now, you guys are going to have to start getting your stories straight, because there are three completely different statements, and they cannot all be true. It cannot be that Voiles personally, himself, conducted the review of 781.
He did.
And that Coogan saw to it that it was individually done.
Others did. It's a crazy. Maybe they were working on it for more than one day, Senator. Have
Will you
thought
show
about that concept?
Will you?
What about the fact
When
that
their
when
testimony is that they did it all on one day? No, I do
announced
not.
every single time.
I do not
that I
agree
was
with that,
canceling the grant,
Administrator.
Senator.
He swore in court that he did it on one day. So that is what he
Because you're
said.
not worried that there's going to be some ranking member at the
None of that is
CUPW
what he
committee
said.
who doesn't care about the facts.
None of that is what he said. I'm using the facts as your
I
employees
conducted
stated
an
them.
individual review of everything, and that
When?
concept doesn't
When?
work for you.
When? When did you conduct that individualized
Work on it
review
every
of
single day,
781
because
grants?
we have a zero tolerance
Will you
policy
show me
towards
your
wasting
schedule?
dollars. Our schedule's publicly released. We don't put on the schedule every single moment
Will you
of the
show me
day
your
that
schedule
It's
to
publicly
prove
released.
your assertion
I'm
that
here
you
under
did
oath,
individualized
Senator.
review of
They're
781?
under oath telling you that I was reviewing this stuff and working on it almost every single day.
And the problem with your assertion here today is that it is belied by your own employees' sworn statements in court and by the decision of the
Senator,
Department of
you're not
Justice
grasping
to
the fact.
admit that what you
No,
say
you're
isn't
not grasping
true.
the fact that we would have multiple employees looking at these grants. That concept just escapes you like that's even a possibility.
The only
You
thing
come
about
here
that is that
and
that's not
you don't care
true.
about 99% of the story.
That's not true according to your own
You don't.
employees'
You're not grasping
testimony.
it, Senator. I don't know what to say to you. You're insisting on the fact.
I'm
that
insisting on the facts.
that
That's
he
exactly
only-
what I'm insisting
Yes,
on. I'm
okay.
insisting on the facts, and I now have
I will
three
say
different
again
versions of the facts,
that Travis
including
Voiles
Department
and
of
I
Justice
and others
lawyers
are working on this every
who
single
admitted
day that
in
we're in
court that
office.
what you're saying
and we're
now
not going
is
to
not
waste
true.
dollars just because of this story. You don't want me to go through the list of all the evidence of waste and abuse. You
No,
don't
what
care
I want you to do,
in conflicts of interest.
What I
don't
want
care
you to
about
do-
unqualified recipients. You don't care about
what I
reduced
want you to
agency
do
oversight.
is explain why the Department of Justice lawyers representing EPA in court under a duty of candor have said that everything you've just said isn't true. That's what I want. Get me that answer.
People are fighting to get those grants back. That man lied, and so they're like, bring me your schedule. And so they said, for Pete Hegseth, who's now trying to claim it, I wasn't even there, I wasn't in the room. Like, oh yeah, okay, we want to see your schedule. Where exactly were you? So there's accountability. That's the thing. When you work for the government, you can run, you can't hide. You're working for a government that's 4 million people that don't like you. You're working for a government, you're doing things where there's 165 million people who are fighting, they're protesting, they're calling their representatives, they are being in your ass, they're on the streets, they're stopping your agenda. So there's more of us than them. That's the lesson from this video. So I'm going to divide this up in pieces. I'm going to wrap this up. I think it's probably like 45, 50 minutes long, but I got to go get my car from the shop. So I'm going to wrap this up here. JJ Legal, each one teach one. Look for the bite-sized pieces of this, and if you watched this, you stayed along for the entire thing, thank you so much. I appreciate you. But yeah, so yeah, it's a mess, but we're gonna win this.